Why can't we not introduce school kids to trans pronouns until they're adults? What's up, Dilbert? Welcome in. If you're asking a serious question, I'm so happy to answer it, even though we are not here ready to discuss the main segment yet. That was going to be in a little bit, but I'll answer your question. Why can't we not introduce school kids to trans pronouns until they're adults? Because they are going to experience trans people in the world before the age of 18, whether it's their fellow classmates coming out or, seeing people in the media. And a lot of people out there are transphobic. Like I would say there are going to be transphobic parents who teach their children that trans people are bad, right? So then let's say that you have a kid and you're not teaching them anything about trans people. You're just trying to hide reality from them for some reason. And then they go to school and they hear one of their classmates like using anti-trans slurs and stuff. So if we aren't teaching the kids that like being trans is normal, then those negative influences are going to be the first thing that they come into contact with. And we especially don't want that to happen to children who are trans. Trans is pretty much an isolated Western phenomena. Yeah, but it's not. Like, with all due respect, my dude, it's not an isolated Western phenomena. It's been, like, recorded throughout human history. Like, the Scythians, the Greeks, Native Americans, the Hijra, like, indigenous groups all over the planet. It's not new, and it would not take very long for you to go find more information about this. The only reason why you believe that being trans is a brand new thing is because during the era right before World War II, there was like a bunch of study going on of trans people, like looking into the whole, let's start, officially sanctioning this because cross-dressing was illegal at the time. Let's start offering these people medical care and stuff. So the not the SS, but the less official SS, the Sturmabteilung in Germany, the Nazis, like they crashed and burned and probably killed the trans people and all the research that were there in Weimar, Germany, in Berlin, actually. So the reason why you in the modern day believe that being trans is this newfangled thing that has never happened before and it's totally an isolated phenomenon and it's like, ooh, this is only Western, that's because Nazis brainwashed all of society by destroying the research about us. So God bless. Merry Christmas. You're welcome. You do absolutely find trans people in the countries that you listed. Maybe they are being actively persecuted and have to hide themselves, or maybe they leave those countries and then transition. But, I think that you're making shit up if you're just going to say that there just aren't trans people in any of these countries. It's just very silly. It's just very silly, Dilbert. It's not a part of the culture. It's not a part of our culture either. In fact, American culture is very against the existence of trans people. So if your argument is that only permissive Western cultures are where trans people decide to be trans, then like that's not even true. Trans people like have a really hard time getting jobs and we get kicked out by our families and it's like pretty fucking hard to get medical care. So if you're trying to make an argument that people are only trans in indulgent, wealthy countries, then explain why people from like severely poverty-stricken economic backgrounds end up trans, even though being trans is going to almost certainly lock them in to an even worse economic situation. Do you think that legal persecution is the only way in which a society can dissuade trans people from being trans? Yeah, China bad. We so rarely have one of these people in the chat. Like this guy subscribed to the channel because he's in the YouTube chat. You have to be subscribed to the channel in order to comment. So my point is not that trans does not exist. My point is that it does not exist as a norm in 80% of the globe. Being trans is not a norm anywhere in the world. It's not the norm in Canada. It's not the norm in the US. It's not the norm in the UK. It is a heavily restricted and gatekept and persecuted identity. Like, it's not a norm in the West. You're going to tell me that there have been like 500 or 600 bills across my country introduced in the last year or two, specifically trying to limit the rights of trans people and like attacking our existence in public by trying to make like public drag illegal. You know, like, you cannot tell me that it is a norm, because you're kind of, by stating that it's a norm, you're saying that it's accepted. Trans is activity pushed by the U.S. State Department. Okay, well, you're silly. You're very silly, because it's not activity being pushed by the U.S. State Department. I think that this is kind of the definition of delusional, and it's crazy because people call trans people delusional, but sweetheart, the U.S. government does not want you to be trans. They don't. Like, they don't. They're about to pass, like, they're at least going to introduce, if not pass, legislation that restricts the rights of trans people to, like, participate in sports, for example. So you really, like, cannot reasonably say that it's being promoted. It's not really being promoted. Based U.S. State Department anyway. I think the icon reflects the viewpoint. Oh, I know. Like, when I saw someone named Dilbert, I knew what I was getting into. I know what the author of Dilbert is like, you know? I seen it become a matter of accept it or else. Or else what? like explain to me what you think the consequences are. Like, if you're trying to say the U.S. government is pushing transness, like, and you have to accept it or else, what's the or else? Like, what consequence is being threatened upon you right now? Because the world that I live in, which is the real world, is that I am misgendered all the time because, like, nobody is gonna, well, actually, someone did reflexively they, them me at the grocery store recently. It was pretty nice. I appreciated it because it's not like I wear a fucking they, them tag to the grocery store. I was just shopping and I needed help finding something. I was like, hey, I need this particular kind of thing. Can you help me find it? And someone was like, okay, can you help them find the thing? It's right over there. And that was awesome. But most of the time I'm being misgendered. Like, I have to just, like, if I experience transphobic rhetoric in public, I mostly just have to, like, ignore it for the sake of my own safety. Like, I don't know what you mean when you're saying, like, oh, you're being forced to accept it, you know? Threatening banking sanctions and aid is threatened. Are you talking about in other countries? Like, sanctions to do with LGBTQ persecution or something? Like, I'm not sure what you're specifically referring to. Okay, but what kinds of LGBTQ persecution are being sanctioned? Yeah, the U.S. government finds the rebellious babies and injects them with the trans gene. They do that in the stands all the time. Okay, but they actually, like, kill gay people in the Middle East sometimes, don't they? Like, when you're talking about sanctions against countries that are doing anti-gay persecution, you know, it's usually not just trans people, you know? Like, that's not the Middle East, okay? You're like the stands, which is, like, several different countries. But, like, you know, you're acting indignant on, like, oh, you have to accept them or else. But, like, what are they doing to the trans people there? What are they doing to them? What are they doing? Do you know? Nothing. Wow. That sounds like a good reason to do sanctions. I bet they're really doing those sanctions. Trans is not a thing in those cultures. Well, then what are you talking about? What do you mean? Okay, so they're sanctioning them for doing nothing to no one? Or do you mean like what are you talking about? You're just being very silly. You're being very silly. What's up, Andes? Hello. My partner has to present super different in public back home in fear of being killed, even though his identity is deeply Indonesian, not based on Western gender norms. Yeah, when NGOs come in and push trans. Does NGO mean like a type of company? Isn't that a type of company? Non-profit organization that operates independently of any government. They want NGOs allowed to freely push trans, and that's where the rift happens. Okay, so I'm just gonna explain something to you, Dilbert, okay? If there are initiatives in these countries where trans is not part of the culture, if there are initiatives there to normalize being trans, it's because trans people are born into every culture, regardless of what actually, like, is considered normal there, you know? Like, in the deep South in America, for example, like, you know, in places like Texas and Alabama, where they will, like, take a trans person and chain them to the back of a truck and then just go. You know what I mean? Like, in the deep South in America, like, let's not even talk about other countries. people are still born gay, even in those places where they would get the shit kicked out of them and murdered for being gay. Trans people are still born in those places. So if there are initiatives to try to get those places to accept trans, it's because those trans people are living in fear of dying or other types of legal persecution. So glad to have this conversation with you. Yeah, as someone who just left the Deep South, it is not super safe for queer people. Right. Yeah, NGO, non-government organization. Don't scare him away, okay? I'm having fun. But even in Chile, where it's a very liberal state in South America, they rejected constitutional changes favoring trans. Yeah, okay, so you're telling me that democracy is a bad way of determining whether minorities get to have rights or not. Like, congratulations, you've demonstrated one of the major failures of democracy. Because if everybody is bigoted against a group of people, then by majority rules, those people are not allowed to exist and have constitutional protections. Good job. Fairies be stealing cis babies and leave trans babies. We are the Fae in disguise. Listen. Letters for Jupiter says, I was born trans in Deep South America. Wait, do you mean in the Deep South in America? I only figured it out once I went away from there. Or do you mean like you were in South America? You were deep in South America. Confusion. Oh, gosh. So rarely do we get some honest disagreement. My point is trans pronouns on school kids is a minor thing to accept that trans should accept. I don't know what you mean by that. You need to rephrase that sentence because that sentence didn't mean anything. I was born in Britain. RIP. I'm so sorry for you Britbongers. It's terrible over there. I live in Texas and I'm scared of leaving my metropolitan area. Yeah. I live in Kansas and it's not too bad around where I live. But like, you know, there's a couple of places in Kansas that are fairly liberal. But yeah, I'm not really trying to have interactions with rednecks, mostly. Darth Gently, thank you so much for the 666 donation. I got money for once, so I want to give some support while I can to you specifically. Hang in there and happy holidays. Appreciate you. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Wowie. Much appreciated. This is going to help me buy groceries. So thank you. 1666. Nice. And as usual, I will flex for you if we get to the goal of 69. UK not allowing pronouns on trans kids is a good compromise, IMHO. So I think that actually the guidance is that they are allowing people to use pronouns at school, but that the parents have to be involved. So the reason why that's problematic. So first of all, like allowing pronouns on kids, it's like, okay, so do you like, should nicknames be illegal in schools? Like it's a mode of address and it's what the person prefers. Okay. But the reason why it's such a problem that they're like, oh, we want to make sure to keep the parents involved on this is because this is predicated on the false belief that parents always have their kids' best interests at heart, when like there are plenty of trans people who can report that they did not feel safe coming out to their parents because their parents were very explicit that if they were gay or trans, they would be kicked out, like that there would be severe material consequences to those teenagers for coming out, right? So you put people at risk by just assuming that parents are nonviolent and like that they're not going to be transphobic to those kids. You know, like if a kid is trying to tell someone at school that they're trans and they're not comfortable telling their parents, that's because the child is intelligent enough to tell that there are going to be negative consequences, right? So basically what the policy is like, I mean, it's like making a point to put trans kids in danger, essentially. I still haven't actually seen why it would be wrong or bad for kids to know about trans people existing. Yeah, you will never win politically going after parents of school kids. UK understands that. No one's trying to go after anybody. I think that you have a victim complex. Like, we're not trying to go after anyone. We're just saying you shouldn't reveal private information about students if they tell you something private, you know? Like, if the kid is trying to find some acceptance at school because they can't get it at home, like, you are putting kids in danger of, like, you know, at the very minimum, having like a transphobic backlash at home in terms of like, oh, we're surprised and angry at you, you know, but it could escalate all the way up to like the parents isolating the kid, not letting them hang out with their friends, you know, revoking their privileges as far as like after school activities go. Like, yeah, putting kids in danger of their parents. Like, do you know how many trans people are abused by their parents for being trans? This is the thing that you don't understand. This is the thing. Our cultures in the UK and America have this like really twisted psychotic idea that like the family is the most important thing. And that like, so long as you have a mom and a dad and kids in a family structure, that's like a positive thing, you know? Parents can always pull their kids out of schools that threaten their parental rights. Hey, parents don't have rights. They don't. At least they don't have rights that supersede the rights of the kid, you know? So in this case, the kid has a right to like be called what they want to be called, you know? And they also have a right to privacy. Like, for example, it's broadly considered abusive to deny your kid privacy by like taking the door off of their room. Like CPS will get involved. So like there are limits to what parents can do to their kids, you know? And one of these areas that we're kind of starting to see emerge is like, what do you do? Parents have rights that supersede their kids. I mean, in some cases, like property rights, like parents own all of their kids' property, sure. But yeah, when it comes to things like privacy, parents' rights in many cases don't supersede the rights of children. And like maybe the state doesn't explicitly have an interest in some of those things, but certainly your kids have an interest in those things. Like if you violate the privacy of your kid, it might not always be a legally actionable, obviously people consider this abuse kind of thing, but at the very minimum, it's going to damage your relationship with your kid, right? So schools have a legal right called in loco parentes when they are on school grounds. I don't know anything about that. Anyway, a parent's rights. Listen, even Margaret Thatcher, the ultra-individualist, didn't have the guts to say the family wasn't real. There is no such thing as society. There are just individual men and women, and there are families. Like, yeah, they really have to uphold the structure of the family, because really what that does is like ingrain in you a sense of like hierarchy, you know? There's a dad who makes decisions, the mom who's the backup, the kids who are obedient and listen. Like patriarchal family structure is the backbone of Western society, allegedly. Legally, the school acts as the parents when the student is at school. Like they have like that level of responsibility and liability. That kind of makes sense. In Canada, you can't take the door off, so the kid is removed, and then the group home will take their door off and actually have no privacy or personal items. I mean, that's still abusive when the group home does it. That's one of the things, if you apply to be a foster parent in the United States, each kid has to have their own room with a door that can close. Like, that's part of the fucking rules, you know? You can't have, like, a bunch of kids in a room with, like, bunk beds, you know? I don't know why you keep talking about NGOs. Like, you keep flip-flopping between assigning blame to the government and then assigning blame to nonprofit organizations. And it's like, I don't really know what your problem is, Dilbert. This talk is not even a thing in most of the world. I really don't think that that's true. I don't know what you mean by most of the world, I guess, but you know, there are conversations about gay and trans people at varying degrees all over. Like there's this one lesbian couple who I follow on social media, and whenever they go visit Malaysia, where one of the women, her family is from, they just kind of have to pretend like they're not married. Like they have to pretend like they're not gay because it would be a problem for them there. So yeah, of course there are places in the world where this conversation is being actively stifled. But again, that doesn't mean that there aren't trans people there. And I really don't know why you're hung up on this, like as though whether or not being trans is publicly accepted, like has anything to do with anything. Like, I don't really know what the point is that you're trying to make. Because like what you're trying to do really is like ad populum. This is like a fallacy ad populum. That the idea that like if most of the world is not talking about transness, then we shouldn't talk about it, or then it's not a big deal. Like if most of the world is not talking about trans people, then what is the implication of that? Like, what are you trying to drive across? Yeah. Parents' rights to abuse their kids. Exactly, mama. Yes. Okay, so yeah, you are implying that something about Western wealth and decadence is associated with more trans identity, but that's not true. It might be associated with less persecution of those identities. Like, I would say there's probably a correlative and not a causative relationship between those things, but like, I don't know what you're trying to say here. I don't know what you know, and it's like, I don't know what you want. Do you think it's a bad thing that the more okay, this is the quote from Dilbert. For those of you who can't see the chat for YouTube, he said, as this country becomes more Latin America, it will become less trans. Like, okay, every year we have the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is in November 14, I think, November 14. When you go to a Trans Day of Remembrance vigil and you hear all the names being listed off, a huge number of those names of murdered trans people are from South America. So like there are tons of trans people there. They're just being actively killed. So like, okay, so if you're saying like if more Latin American culture spreads more across the rest of the North American continent, then there will be fewer trans people. Like, okay, well then you're saying what you want is more murder of trans people, or that you're predicting more murder of trans people. Not totally sure. It's the great replacement. Yeah, it is. Closest correlation would be access to the ability to get care in those places. Yeah. I'm saying in your lifetime, you will see less trans in school and public places. I think you're delusional. And like I think what you're saying is there will be an increase of violence toward trans people, so there will be fewer trans people. Like I think that's kind of what you're saying, is that there's like a bunch of murder that's going to happen, and then that will dissuade people from being trans in public, because that's the only way for there to be less trans in the world. Like, because more like trans people are still going to be born at the same rate, but if there are fewer of them, quote unquote, then that's because they're being actively suppressed in some form or fashion. And like, you should probably not want to live in a world that's like that. It's just not a part of the dominant culture, so it will simply be out of sight. Like, okay, we're a small percentage of people. We're still not part of the dominant culture, to be clear. Like, trans people are still sidelined. You're seeing more of us in more industries, but that's just because the active persecution is letting up slightly. Like, yeah, what is the dominant culture? You have a whole Pride Month? LOL. LOL, we have a whole Pride Month. We have a whole month dedicated to our strength and celebrating ourselves. And like, it's only becoming broadly accepted now because people have realized they can make money off of it. And that's like, it's not the dominant culture. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to say about this. Like, oh, you have Pride Month. Like, okay, and who benefits from Pride Month? Do trans people or queer people actually benefit from Pride Month? Or is that just something that, yeah, people decided to start making money off of the goodwill toward queer people? Yeah, it's Christmas Pride for 3 months. We're doing Christian Pride right now. We stole a whole month. True. Anyway, sip a little coffee, babes. 44 viewers in here right now. So usually we don't have a chud in the chat, but I'm having fun. So if you want to hit the like button, I appreciate that. We enjoy the like button being pressed. It's good for me. I did my little review of Nominal Naomi recently, and it's got me wanting to do more conversations. The Christmas chud. I know, we've been blessed. Thank you so much for blessing our chat, Dilbert, for Christmas. 'Twas the night before Chudmas. This could only be more perfect if it were Christmas Eve, because that's when my next stream is Christmas Eve. Oh, goodness gracious, my leggies. Yeah, so anyway, Dilbert, I don't really feel like you've demonstrated, like, anything, really. I'm not sure, like, what point you were trying to make at any part of this. You should definitely have Naomi on. Yeah, what would we talk about, though? Can't remember how to check my orders on the website. I think I ordered something recently. LOL, don't know. You ordered a beanie recently, Andes, and those take forever for some reason. It's the only thing that I ordered for myself, and I if I can, listen, this is what your donations go toward right now. Consider pitching me a $5 because I would like to buy myself a hoodie of my own merch. And it does still cost money for me to do that. It's not free for me to get samples of my own stuff. So, wow, 15% of Brazil identifies as LGBTQ. That's pretty good. Why are you wasting time giving a low-tier chat troll the attention he craves? Because I enjoy it. I'm having fun. It's for me. You will see in time. Ooh, very cryptic. Very cryptic. What a weirdo. USA going to Brazil to become gay. True. It's unfortunate that Dilbert was in YouTube chat and not on the website, because it's going to be harder. I don't know that I'll be able to upload the segment later without his part on the screen. Sad. Yeah, he's threatening us. Yeah. Not cryptic, just I see it now. My city will be Latino majority likely in 10 years. Okay. Do you have any idea how many Mexican trans women I know? Like, I could edit his parts in. True. That would take a lot more effort than he's worth, though. I don't know. Could be fun. Like, I don't really get what point you're trying to make. And like, this is a little bit great replacement. Like, why, like, what makes you say that any place is going to be Latino majority? Why does that matter? Do you genuinely think that, like, do you think that it's going to be a majority Latino culture also instead of like an increasingly mixed culture? I don't know, dude. Oh, are you Hispanic? You're Latino? Okay. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of you are like brainwashed into being Catholic. So that's part of the problem with the Latino community. Like, I think that's why you guys are so violently anti-gay. And I am familiar with it. Like, you're very anti-gay as a culture in some ways. Like, and I think it's because of the prevalence of Catholicism, frankly. I'm not like trying to like slur all Latino people. Like, again, I know plenty of Mexican trans women and like, migrant trans women trying to escape South America to come to the US where it's better. Most Latinos are evangelicals. Ooh, I really thought that it was more Catholicism, but I'm sure it depends on where you live. But regardless, like, you're just yet another group who were colonized and brainwashed into the white religion, and now you do the job that the white people wanted you to do, which is to violently enforce within your own racial group the white, like, binary gender concept that the Christians and Catholics decided to spread everywhere when they were in the middle of destroying your indigenous culture. So congratulations on I guess kind of defending Latino culture for that. Mexico is still better than Florida for trans people. Yeah, I don't think that Mexico itself is that bad. It's more like the further south you get. Spain is statistically one of the least homophobic countries. It's probably more violence and poverty. Well, he's talking about Latin America. He's not talking about Spain. Yeah, honestly, Dilbert, like, the way that you talk about people is very conservative. Yeah, you're saying blacks right now. We distrust both white and blacks. And you keep using trans as a weird noun. It's quite strange. It's a bit objectifying and pretty racist, I would say. Maybe a little bit racist. Even Latinos who stay Catholic are almost certainly more secular the more they live in America. Yeah, they tend, like, I'm not, they're not all radical or whatever. Maybe you need to live in the South then. Sounds like NYC isn't for you. And yeah, NYC might be a little bit too progressive. Anyway, 48 viewers. Can we get to 50 likes today? We might be able to. Perhaps. Latinos don't talk politics much with strangers. Why are you here then? Like, I don't know what your deal is. But yeah, I don't really get the point of any of what you've been saying. But thanks for, coming on and chatting with me. I've enjoyed it. Him saying trans identities isn't from some cultures and is actually spread by the West is pretty racist alone. Like, not even passively. That idea leads to a lot of violence. Right, yeah. Like, the idea that, oh, that's not something that we do as people of color is probably one of the things that increases violence toward, like, people of color who are trans. Also, it's not like Spain, Portugal, and Latin America don't have an intimate history with fascism. Fair enough. Mackenzie, thank you for the $5 dono. Get yourself some merch. As always, I wish I could give more. Keep doing what you do. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Happy solstice. Happy New Year. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the $5. That materially makes my life better. Not gonna lie. Like, materially, every $5 makes a big difference for me. You're seeing it a lot right now with the Palestinians. They're like, oh, well, they hate gays, so it's okay to bomb all of them, including the gays. Right. As though there are not gay Palestinians and trans Palestinians. Dilbert, I feel like you don't know all Latino people. Like, I'm sure that you have probably a closer idea of what y'all talk about. But yeah, it's like, you're making a lot of real sweeping statements about the entirety of Latino culture. As though, like, okay, in Pulse, when there was the Pulse shooting in Florida, do you have any idea how many of the people who died there were Latino? Like, it was crazy. Is the West rich because it's progressive, or is the West progressive because it is rich? Yeah, that's the question. It's like, I feel like, I guess it was sort of labor power. So this is, so what I'm going to say is it's the West is rich and therefore it is progressive. But my reasoning for saying that is because, like, the wealth acquisition had directly to do with, like, the industrialization of society. And so, like, the more industrial production you have, the more you're bringing people together and, like, they are making enough money to support themselves and they are, like, able to recognize their power as workers together. So, like, progressive politics, I feel in the US kind of springs from labor solidarity in a way. That's kind of a theory that I'm just sort of making up on the spot here. But that's kind of my hypothesis at this time. Like, yeah, why is Western culture, quote unquote, more progressive? I kind of feel like it's because Western culture, quote unquote, tends to be more secular. Clean, just showered and shaved. Yes, I use my epilator. So when my legs are smooth. They are fucking smooth. Like, it's like the hairs all got yanked out. The Spanish language itself does not allow for trans. Yeah, it actually does. If you knew fuck all about the subject, you would know that it is increasingly common to use, instead of O for masculine and A for feminine, they use E at the end of a lot of words in order to make them gender neutral. Wow. Crazy. Does it come from labor solidarity because Western capitalists are more progressive than third world capitalists? I mean, I'm not saying that for each individual person that their progressive politics as it relates to trans people is where they're mooring it from. I don't think that that's where it moors from. Like, I think it comes from when we have a longer periods of economics and political stability, so we have time to culturally sort out some of these social issues. Yeah, it's like, okay, in a society that is heavily transphobic, like, what, you know, it depends, I guess, like, what do we mean by the E and the X was pushed by NGOs in South America and got clowned for it? Okay. No, Christy, I have the ability to kick people. If I want to kick people, I am having a lot less fun because at this point, like, I still don't understand exactly, Trey, I don't understand what the point is. Me, when a language doesn't allow something. Yeah, 1984 right here. Also, if it doesn't, then, like, change the language then? Who cares? I think that Dilbert is making fun of the idea that the language could be changed because when they tried to introduce these, like, using the E instead of O or A, then it was like, ooh, everybody unilaterally, every Spanish speaker made fun of that concept and decided not to. Like, okay, again, you're just telling me that democracy is bad. Like, all you're telling me is that majority rules is not the correct form of governance. Yeah, wow, transphobes were being transphobic about the idea of language being inclusive. Wow, color me shocked. Color me shocked, babe. It's about culture. Okay, why are you saying it's about culture as though that's distinct from the idea of it being transphobic? Like, as though culture on the whole across the entire planet isn't actively transphobic. It's not about politics, but it is about politics. If you're talking about trans people, it's inherently about politics because our existence is being politicized. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really have I would love to be able to talk about trans, like, people outside the context of politics. And sometimes we do talk about certain things like, oh, what kind of surgeries can you get? Aren't they so fascinating? Like, that's a subject that we can mostly have a conversation about without talking about the politics of access to transness. And you're not going to use politics to change culture. Like, here's what you're trying to, okay, Dilbert, politics and culture are the same, like, they're not exactly the same thing, but they heavily influence each other, right? Like there wouldn't be a transphobic backlash if it weren't for the fact that transphobia is part of the culture, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of anti-transphobic backlash, like a lot of pro-trans people. And so pro-trans sentiments are also part of our culture. You know, like the political belief of being pro or anti-trans they're both part of our culture. But you're right, politics tries to influence culture. I think that you're fucking insane, Dilbert. Like, what? Do you really think it's a one-way street that, like, that politics is influencing culture and that's it? As though, like, the culture of religious extremism in my country isn't, like, trying to influence the politics of whether trans people have the right to use the bathroom in public? Like, the culture dictates the laws in a way, you know? It's like, and for the most part, like, as far as I know, like, you kind of do have to make a cultural shift in order for people to accept that the law has changed, you know? The divine right of kings. Yes! Mama, hot take. Politics and culture should be changed if they're bad because they are mutable concepts and trans people exist. High five. Spicy take. Do you think when people say cultural barrier to write off any criticism of another culture, they're engaging in idpol? So I think that the definition of idpol is kind of like, it depends who you are. Like, what do you mean when you say idpol? When you're saying identity politics, what do you mean by that? Corpse Candy, thank you so much for the tier 2 sub. Happy holidays, bit early, but thanks for making the year more informative, entertaining. Thank you. Much appreciate you guys. You know, it's been, for me, like a pretty challenging year. And I still feel like things are not quite settled, but I'm doing my best to just, like, have a good winter, celebrate the new year. Dicks are back. Yes. Someone also made an amazing emote that says pussy, but I haven't added it to the website yet because I'm very id pole versus ego pole versus super ego pole. True. Suffragettes changed culture. That's true. Yeah, so I guess the suffragettes were a political group, right? They were terrorists, effectively. And I don't mean that in any stigmatized manner. Like, the suffragettes were terrorists. They used like fear and property destruction and like violence in order to influence the law. Like, so forgetful. Oh gosh. So anyway, it's been a good conversation. I thought it was all peaceful protest based. Yeah, so when I think of suffragettes, one of the things I also think about is the prohibition like tactics. And so the prohibition tactics were definitely, and I feel like it was suffragettes. So one of the suffragette actions, this was in the UK. One of the suffragette actions, which was explored by our group, was the burning of the Northfield Library in 1914. So the suffragettes set fire to a library. The building and its contents were destroyed. A book by Christabel Pankhurst was left at the site, along with a note reading, "To start your new library." Suffragette bombing and arson campaign. Like, they did some crazy shit out there. Idpol in this context meaning when people weaponize their identity as belonging to a marginalized group to excuse discriminatory behavior. So I guess if that's what your definition of Idpol is, then yeah, if people are saying like transness, well, so Christy, I guess you're saying like because this person is saying Latino culture is anti-trans, therefore like because I'm Latino or because Latino people as a culture are against trans people, then it's okay that we are doing the discrimination, right? I'm a realist and I respect that parents draw a red line when it comes to their kids. Yeah, Dilbert, again, what you're not seeming to hear when I'm describing this to you is that, like, yes, transphobic parents are going to be mad if the school lets their kid be trans without telling them. Of course, that's why the kids deserve protection. And again, like there's two different conversations here. There's the, are we going to allow a child to use a different name and pronouns at school conversation? And then there's also the, are we going to allow any discussion or education around trans issues in the schools? And so I feel like that's two different conversations. When they're raising their kids, this gay and trans stuff is not even under consideration. Well, that's a major failure for them as parents. And if they prevent the school from educating on those issues, then that's a major failure of the education system, because kids should not grow up being like made to be ignorant of normal human behavior around them. Like, what do you do if one of your kids' friends at school has two daddies or two mommies, or if one of their parents is trans? Like, what do you do if one of the teachers is visibly trans? You just tell them about trans people. Like, it's so messed up to try to like lie to your children about what kind of people there are in the world when that is totally normal. Like, it's one thing if you're trying to prevent your child from finding out about, war and torture and death and all that kind of stuff. Completely makes sense to me. But trying to prevent them from knowing about gay and trans people, like, I don't see that as anything other than like deeply bigoted. Have you ever so when you say, oh, it never entered the home or the school as it is today, have you ever asked someone who is like gay or trans now as an adult, and when they were a kid, it was that culture where we never talked about it? Like, have you ever asked someone what it was like growing up in a culture where we don't talk about being gay or trans, where like it's understood that you shouldn't talk about that stuff? Like, oh, we don't talk about that. Have you ever asked what kind of effect that has on people? Have you ever wondered for a split second what it's like for those people who aren't you to be growing up in a society that kind of just passively refuses to acknowledge their differences? And when it eventually does acknowledge those differences, it's usually like because someone is calling you a faggot at school, like it's, what do you never asked, because I think the larger concern is growing up and not sexuality. But for kids, it's not sexuality. For kids, it's their romantic attraction and it's their gender presentation. Like, of course you never asked because it never occurred to you what it would be like if you were, let's say, an 11-year-old kid and you had a crush on someone of the same gender as you, and you grew up in a society that kind of just passively told you that that's a bad thing and that you shouldn't do it because you'll get beat up. Or if your dad is like, I'll kick the shit out of you if you ever try to have a relationship with a boy or whatever. You know, like, I don't think you've ever really considered what growing up in that kind of society is like. So of course you don't understand why adult queer and trans people are trying to open up the conversation for young folks, because it's literally never occurred to you that that might be like a terrible way to grow up, you know? And I would like it if you would maybe consider what it would be like to grow up with like no frame of reference for how to be the kind of person that you are. Like, and like all of the messages that you receive about it are like, you're bad and you shouldn't be this. Because that's ultimately what young queer and trans people are receiving. In the absence of like neutral or affirmative education, what they're receiving is a passive education that being queer is bad, that being trans is bad. What it does is teaches children to lie to their parents and everyone else. They can't be themselves. People around them never know who they really are. It tears families apart to deny someone's orientation. Right. Get them to look up hermeneutic injustice. Oh my God. Is this something I need to know? Venusian, are you making me learn fucking theory right now? Are you making me learn theory right now? I was restricted from learning about LGBT people, and all it caused was a repressed, angry, hateful kid who wanted to hurt people because I had so much rage I didn't know what to do with until educators like Lux finally gave me answers. Yeah. How about consider this? It's disrespectful in many countries to even bring up sexuality pre-marriage. What do you mean by sexuality? Can you explain what you mean by that? I am literally an expert on hermeneutic injustice. Jazz, what's up? Is this something that I need to know about? Hermeneutical injustice occurs when this is just from Wikipedia, when someone's experiences are not well understood by themselves or others because these experiences do not fit any concepts known to them or known to others, due to the historic exclusion of some groups of people from activities such as scholarship and journalism. Oh, cool. So I didn't realize that there was an entire term for this. So hermeneutical injustice is like the injustice and pain that you experience by growing up in a society that simply doesn't acknowledge that people like you exist. This is the term for what people experience when they grow up, knowing that there's something different about them, but not knowing what exactly that is until they later find out that they're gay or trans or something. Flirting, for example, would be considered haram in Uzbekistan. Okay. Like, do they talk about like arranging a marriage? Like, because so they discuss sexuality before marriage in the sense that they discuss like arranging the marriage, right? Like they have to have some conversations about it, I presume. Yeah, we aren't in Uzbekistan. Like, are we using Uzbekistan as like the barometer for how we should do things? Are we saying that they're doing things correctly? There are no arranged marriages. Then how do you, okay, well, let's say not arranged marriages. So, okay, flirtation. You think flirtation is unacceptable in this society. Okay, well, does a man and a woman have a conversation about the idea that they might get married? Like, do they ever hold hands in private? You know, like, and also, like, why do you care what's happening in Uzbekistan? Like, okay, so the men and the women talk about it. They hold hands in private. Okay, that's sexuality. Like, again, I don't know what your point is. I love that country. LOL, it's a rich culture. This guy just wants to live in a culture where there are no gay or trans people, is what we've learned. Dilbert, like, fantasizes about living in a world where there are no trannies or fags, and, like, he just gets to be in a straights-only culture. Like, that kind of sounds like what the issue is here. We had a whole chat last stream about being disrespectful. How perfect. Listen. Deport transphobes. Yeah. Go to Uzbekistan if you love it so much. Jiminy Christmas. 54 viewers. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Oh, I don't think that YouTube lets people do links anymore. I'm so sorry. That's not something that I have any power over. I tried to change it and it just doesn't let me. At least it doesn't show them to me anymore. What's the use in not letting people know anything? If it's a choice between identities, it's not. Then is the fear that knowing about being trans is so enticing that it automatically outweighs being cis? But if you do think it's a choice, then people can make their own decisions, right? Okay. Please go to Uzbekistan and don't wear a mask. That sounds like a great idea for you to do. Dilbert strikes me as a person who thinks that just because one thing is considered the default, it makes it not ideologically driven. So queer is therefore ideological. Maybe. What's up, baby squid? Gorgeous. I'm gonna drink more of this water. Oh my God. Or I was gonna drink, yeah, I meant to say more of this coffee and I said water and then there was a fucking gnat in it. Cringe. Chile is the most gay-friendly country in South America. Cool. Neat. But yeah, honestly, I think with like how violently white supremacist the United States is, the concept that Latino culture is going to continue to expand in the United States, at least in the next 10 years, is fucking bonkers. Excuse me. Like, I just can't imagine that the white people in America are going to be kosher with more Latino people and like that having an influence on the culture. If there's anything in the world that's going to make white evangelicals decide to embrace trans people, it would be like the idea of like a sweeping Latino culture that's like also trying to enforce those same gender roles. They're just like, that's the only way, is for them to be like, this binary gender role shit is being imported from Mexico. You know? Dilbert reminds me of the guy who argued with Nominal Naomi about breastfeeding, going, ooh, that's weird. Like, okay, cool, but where's the harm? Right, like again, the most recent thing that Dilbert has just said, like, okay, Chile is the most gay-friendly country in South America. Therefore, if you can't pass a pro-trans law there, then it would be impossible anywhere else. I'm like, I don't know why you're saying any of these things. True, they keep putting politics, i.e. women, in my video games. My Mexican family still refuses to call me after coming out. But yes, pro-queer is from those damn Mexicans. Wait, my Mexican family? Mexican dad still refuses to call me after coming out. I know, like, the expectations for masculinity within Latino culture is like pretty intense stuff. Completely understand. Dilbert should also follow his namesake and watch the fucking show his name is from, because it's leftist and anti-discrimination. I thought that Dilbert was anti-trans though. Like, I actually thought that Dilbert was conservative. Didn't the author of that comic, just like within the last couple years, people were like, this dude's a reactionary. I could have sworn. Anyway, the show is very leftist. Hold on. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Dilbert, author, reactionary? Dilbert comic dropped after a racist rant by creator. Racist remarks. So, anyway, that was the problem. Dilbert is pro-white, which I respect. Oh, man. Being pro-white is very cringe. It's deeply, deeply cringe. The author is genuinely the least intelligent and most embarrassing human being ever. Listen, I can't make that kind of... Like, I respect that you are pro-trans, but we simply see things differently. Are you saying that you are not pro-trans? Like, why did you frame that way? Also, I'm not pro-trans. I am trans. I just accept my own existence. I don't know. Yeah, he distrusts both whites and, quote, blacks. True. Guys, he's here to talk to me, so if he's not responding to your messages, honestly, I kind of prefer it that way. I just don't know what your motivations are, Dilbert. I want to help you. You know? I want you to... have good informed opinions and good arguments for those opinions, right? But I don't understand what any of you're trying, like, I don't know what you're trying to say. So, thanks for chatting, though. Dilbert's just a chaos gremlin, it's true. He's just enjoying the attention. You know, sometimes we lavish attention on chuds who want attention. And then eventually we get bored and move on. I'm pro you, I just don't think that kids should ever know about whatever you are. Lel, true, Divini. Surprising then, because the show is all about hating capitalism and shit. It turns out that you can have class awareness and still be violently racist. You know, like, there are plenty of blue-collar workers who hate Jeff Bezos and also hate the N-words, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's not it's not like they don't exist. Welcome back, kitty. Goodness gracious. Okay, well, we probably should segue into one of our main topics. We had a little bit of fun for a while. I have so much trouble trying to pick my battles. Do you think it was a waste of time arguing with this person? No. Well, okay, so yeah, we had this conversation in the Discord recently. We were having this discussion about whether debate is really beneficial. You know, statistically, like, you know, studies on this kind of suggest, as far as I understand it, that, like, debate, the person who you're debating with is invested in doubling down during your debate. So you are never going to, at least in the moment, convince your interlocutor of your beliefs, for the most part, right? Maybe they'll think on what you said after, and they'll decide to change their mind, possibly. We're not going to count on it, though. What I have generally said in the past is that, like, debate is useful for the people around. Yeah, don't worry about it, Christy. You didn't start an argument or anything. Don't worry about it. But, like, yeah, it kind of seems like people, I don't know, it sort of depends. Like, are the people going to be convinced by the arguments? Some people are going to be convinced by the arguments in the debate. Most people are going to be convinced by whoever seemed to win at the end of the debate. You know, The more you can clown on your opponent, the better you'll be at. This is part of why people like to gish gallop in a debate, is because it makes them seem like they have so many points on their side and the other people are like scrambling to catch up, like with all these good points, And so my personal opinion is like that debate is fun. First and foremost, it's fun to participate in a debate, to watch a debate. They're entertaining, okay? If you can succeed in making your side seem more intelligent, you don't have to have the better arguments even. You just have to be good at making yourself seem correct and making the other person seem over-emotional or irrational, or make them seem like they're unprepared or something like that. It's an optics game. Debate is an optics game. It's not about actually convincing anyone. It's about seeming like you won, okay? So yeah, debate is like fun. And sometimes you will have an opportunity during a debate to present an argument that someone in the audience has never heard before. Maybe nobody has ever heard the argument that, like, what happens to kids who have transphobic parents, right? Like, if you have to disclose if a kid comes out to you as trans and you're required to disclose, that harms trans kids with transphobic parents. There are going to be some people who truly do believe that parents always have their kids' best interests at heart. There's going to be people out there who grew up in really supportive homes, and it would never occur to them that a parent with, their unconditional love and everything, they cannot imagine the idea of a parent being abusive. So sometimes you have to like shell shock people and present them this idea that no, sometimes parents like kill their trans kids or kick them out and put them in situations that are compromised. Like, we did a story not too long ago about a trans man who was like 18 or 19 years old who was killed when he went on a date. And like, he was in a situation where he was like living with a family friend. Like, he was living with a family friend because his parents had kicked him out for being trans. So he was in a vulnerable position, living outside of his parents' house, being lured by someone on the internet who was giving him attention. He did not have an adequate support system, and he died. So yeah, like, these things are unfortunate. It's like unfortunate that parental lack of acceptance can have this effect on people. And it is also unfortunate that, like, it doesn't occur to folks. Yeah, his parents made him more vulnerable. Exactly, yeah. So that's what the problem is with that particular thing. And like, yeah, anytime you debate someone, there's probably like an argument that someone has not heard before. Now, for some folks, if you're not good at debate, it's a risky thing that can actually backfire on you. If you're bad at it and your person you're debating with manages to make you look foolish, then you've done a disservice to your side. It's an optics game, and if you don't feel confident that you can win the optics game, then you might not want to play. Later, Venusian, I think some people can't change their mind in the moment, but learning new and different information will leave people with things to think about at a later date, which isn't super likely to work out, but it's still possible. Yeah, so there are some people who really are suited to a debate. Vosh is really good at debating. He can think of his arguments on the fly. If you're bad at debating, then maybe what you want to do is, instead of giving the opposition a platform, like people, quibble about this with, should you debate Nazis or not? Like, giving the platform to a Nazi is giving them a chance to convince someone with their arguments. And like, I think that there is a point to be made there if you are not good at tearing apart their arguments in real time. So there might be, for some people, it might be better to go, okay, I'm going to take these ideas that Nazis say and make a constructed video where I have plenty of time to dissect the points, each one in their turn. So yeah, I'm not going to come out swinging in favor or against debate. I think that it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And I also recognize that it is not the most effective use of my time as far as trying to convince people. But is it much different than what I do the rest of the time? I'm mostly just like yelling at the same positions, but there's no person there to talk back and forth with me. I'm debunking those same ideas. It just can be more fun. And maybe, we get to address certain arguments that I might ignore most of the time. Like, I'm not going to talk about the great replacement theory most of the time, but Dilbert gave us an opportunity to talk about like white identitarian great replacement theory a little bit as it relates to transness. So I don't know. Anyhow, let's look at one of our main topics for today. Divini, yeah, you completely understand me. We need a diversity of tactics. So different people are better at different things. And here's the other part of diversity of tactics. Not only are different people better at different things, you know, some folks are good at debate. Some folks are good at video essays. Some folks are good at just talking off the cuff on stream. Hello. But it's not just diversity of tactics in that each person is going to be better at something. It's also diversity of tactics in that every person who is in their political growth, they need different things at different times in their process. So I know people used to get so butthurt about folks like Matt Dillahunty in the atheist community being all firebrand and religion is terrible. You know, Christopher Hitchens, religion poisons everything. And we need those people though, because, you know, there are going to be times when a religious person is deconverting that they need someone to very sweetly explain oh, you know, I just don't believe I'm going to see any of my loved ones when I die, you know, and here's how I have started to reconcile myself. You know, they will listen to people's individual opinions and there will be these sort of soft conversations. And then at different points in their deconstruction, they might need someone like Matt Dillahunty to go, your ideas are fucking stupid and here's how they're fallacious and here's how this argument doesn't work, you know? So each person is going to need something different in their own evolution and deconstruction as well, which is why, you know, I don't condemn debaters. I don't condemn video essayists. I don't condemn that one guy, you know, that one black guy who's made friends with a bunch of different KKK members and been part of their deconstructions. I don't think that most black people want to put themselves in that position, but diversity of tactics, that's a very powerful way to go. Changing individual minds like that. I don't know his name, but you all know the story that I mean. There's a black dude who decided to make it his job to be friends with a bunch of KKK members or whatever. What's up, Shade? Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us. Daryl Davis is his name. Thank you. Thank you. We can give him a name and he's not just that black dude. So yes, Daryl Davis, he does good work. I am not necessarily going to be the person who's out there talking to individual transphobes, trying to convince them disagree on some things, but he's a great debater. Is he a debater? I guess that is part of what he has to do, and he has to be convincing. It's not just him being a nice guy, it's him being influential in some manner. So, you know, props to him, mad props. I do enjoy the idea that we could have someone who's kind of chuddy come in here and gradually be convinced to be less chuddy, right? Of course, that's the fucking dream of anybody who wants to be influential as far as trans acceptance is concerned. It's the dream for someone to go, you know, I was watching your content and I used to be a real shithead and now I'm not anymore. Not structured debate, but he sits and talks with Grand Wizards. Is that yeah. So he's not it's not a structured debate, but he is sat there with them explaining, you know, here's why black people deserve rights, I guess. Here's why lynching is wrong. I don't know. I can't imagine being that guy, but again, mad props to him. My goodness. I used to be a real shithead and I watch your content. Different time periods, but still true. I wasn't part of your deconstruction from being a shithead. You don't survive in New York City by being argumentative. It helps to relax. I feel like there's not a lot of interaction that you have with other people that lasts very long in New York City. That would be my guess. My guess would be that you have a lot of very brief interactions with other human beings. But yeah, I am never, ever, ever, ever planning to go to New York City. Ever? Ever. If there was some big YouTube event and someone paid for my airfare and hotel, maybe, but I would not be going anywhere. I would just be in my hotel room doing nothing. Anyhoozle. So our main topics for today, we've got the UK trans thing, and we've got the Trump off the ballot in Colorado thing. What else do we have? Those are kind of the two main things that I wanted to talk about today. There's a South Carolina bill requiring schools to report pronouns. I feel like that's less sweeping than the UK one, so I might mention it during the UK one. Dilbert is a Trump voter. Well, all right. Thanks for hanging out. Oh no. There's a bunch of new legislative bills that have been put in, and Erin has published her spreadsheet about it. So there's a shit ton of bills that have been pre-filed. There's a good amount of scrolling that that's not as many as I would have expected. There are approximately 90 bills that have been pre-filed. Or hold on. Are all these... Wait. So there's some bills that have been pre-filed. Maybe not like 90, but yeah, there's at least 90 actively being looked at in their congressional situations. Pre-file, referred to Education Committee, co-authored, public hearing has been held. Yeah, so all of these are in process. I'm just looking at a spreadsheet, guys. Sorry, I'm not showing it to you. Here's the spreadsheet. Wow, look at it. There's so much spreadsheet happening here. These are all the active bills that Aaron has tracked at the moment. Anti-trans bills in the United States. What's the general opinion on how those bills will go? If they're shot down, does that make it harder for them to try again? They're doing what's called, it's very colloquially called shotgunning, when they just kind of file a bunch of different laws that all relate to sort of the same thing and hope that one of them passes through. Like, shit ton of these are in Missouri. Like, look at this. Missouri, forced misgendering law, online obscenity law, legal discrimination in healthcare law, gender-affirming care ban, book ban, trans bathroom ban, anti-boycotts act, ban on public investment in ESG funds, don't say gay/forced outing bill, another don't say gay/forced outing bill, anti-boycotts act, online obscenity law, gender-affirming care ban, drag ban, trans sports ban, pronoun ban, book ban. That I'm not even done, and that's just in Missouri. So general consensus is they're gonna manage to pass some of them in some of these places. And it's just a matter of, you know, we are already dealing with trans bathroom ban in the appeals court, and that may very well be on its way to the Supreme Court. So we may see that the Supreme Court lays down some lays down some rules about this. I'm not terribly hopeful, but yeah, if it were to happen that the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court says, hey, trans people are allowed to use bathrooms, stop trying to do this shit. If it doesn't go to the Supreme Court, then that would be the precedent within the Ninth Circuit. If it goes to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court says trans people deserve the right to use the bathrooms, stop fucking with this, then that means that any lower court, like any state that tries to pass a law against it, wouldn't be able to, right? HB 68 in Ohio passed. It's still sitting on DeWine's desk as far as I know. I know that he's a Republican in Ohio, but we were not sure if he was going to sign it or not. He seems like he's not 100% guaranteed to sign it. I love that there's so many bills that we need an autistic person's special interest to keep track. True. A workaround to bathrooms is the gender-neutral bathrooms. That's a good compromise. Dilbert, separate but equal is not a compromise. That's called legal discrimination. You know, I prefer gender-neutral bathrooms because I'm non-binary anyway. And I don't like the idea that any of the binary bathrooms, I don't want people to ask me questions. But like trans people, like if you have a space that is for women and then you tell trans women they can't go in there, that's discrimination. It's separate but equal to give them a separate space. It's like you're just trying to say, oh, you have the same dignity as everyone else, but we're not going to let you go into the women's bathroom, you know? And the reason why that's being discussed in the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court right now is that 21 state attorneys general filed an amicus brief going into detail about how there are no like issues with trans people harassing or assaulting people in the bathroom. You have to compromise. It can't be winner take all. Here's the thing, Dilbert. Trans people have been using the bathroom of their correct gender like for longer than probably either you or I have been alive, because it doesn't because nobody, it was never illegal, you know, up until 2016, it's never been illegal. So the compromise is leave trans people the fuck alone. I don't understand why you think that the compromise has to be, I need to accept having fewer rights than other people do. The compromise position is stop trying to restrict other people's rights and access to stuff. I don't, I don't know, again, why am I being asked to capitulate? Because I know it doesn't work. What do you mean? Again, Republicans are inventing a problem here. They're just inventing this problem and attacking trans people and trying to limit my public rights to access public bathrooms. If you say trans people have to use third gender spaces, they have to use gender neutral bathrooms. Okay, well, who is going to fund adding gender neutral facilities? Or are you going to say legally you need to make all public bathrooms gender neutral so that there is no such thing as a sexed space, but if you say trans people have to use gender neutral bathrooms legally, then like I still can't use the bathroom anywhere that doesn't have a gender neutral space, which is most places. Yeah, let's compromise with Dilbert. Transphobic people aren't allowed to use public bathrooms. Anyway, what's up, Druzilla? The only place I visited in the US was Raleigh, North Carolina. I loved it. I have a good friend there. That was my first time in the States. I've never been to North Carolina. It's kind of the South. Trans women started changing at the gym in women's spaces and it created a stir. I don't care. Like, why are you staring at other people's bodies? Like, if a cis woman is upset at a trans woman being in the bathroom, stop looking at her body. And what's interesting, Dilbert, is we went over one example of a cisgender girl, woman, like 18-year-old, complaining about a trans woman in the bathroom, but that trans woman had had a pussy surgery. So they like complain about trans women in the bathrooms, but it's not even about whether they're intact or not. And also, let's not pretend like trans women are out there hanging dong, like swinging it around for everybody to see. A lot of the times they're like, I'm trying to remain private anyway. Again, why do you think that cis people being uncomfortable with something has anything to do with whether trans people should be allowed to be there? Like, I don't care about your feelings. Your feelings do not, like, create a justification for limiting my right to be in public spaces. White women were really uncomfortable with black women sharing their public spaces and like not using the same like water fountains as them and stuff. Like, white women used to like get black men lynched because they were uncomfortable that he was looking at her. So like, again, is this how we structure society? By like the people who are in power in the majority can just decide that they don't like being around a type of person that they don't like, and that then becomes like legal justification for limiting public access rights. Women have a right to their concerns. Women don't have the right to have other people forcibly removed from a space for not doing anything to them. If someone is being inappropriate to you in a bathroom, it doesn't matter what their gender is. You know, if you're making the argument that, oh, we can't have trans women in those spaces because it'll make cis women uncomfortable, like, you know, I don't know how old you are, Dilbert, sweetheart, but when I was a kid, and I'm almost 30, it used to be that people would say, if you're gay, you shouldn't be in those same-sex spaces. Like, so if you were a woman who looked kind of masculine, people would assume that you were a butch lesbian, and then they would try to get you removed from those spaces. And same thing with gay men. You know, I read an article recently, like it was a letter to the editor type thing, about how an attendant in the locker room who was like a man who was the kind of, he was giving you your towel kind of guy. He had nail polish on, and this man was like, this person should not be working in the locker room because they're getting their giggles looking at men's bodies. So, you know, the arguments against trans people being in the public spaces like bathrooms and locker rooms, it's just regurgitated homophobia. And, you know, we've kind of decided that that's not reasonable. I don't know. That's why I say you compromise when you are not in the majority culture. No, what you're saying again is that if a ton of white people, if the majority of white people don't like black people using the same bathroom as them, then black people just have to accept not being allowed to use the bathroom. You are the kind of person who, if you were alive like 60 years ago, 80 years ago during 1960s, you would be legitimately going, yeah, well, black people are a minority in our culture, and so you should just accept having to use a separate bathroom. You know, I just want you to understand that it's identical. The argument that you're making is exactly the same. You know, oh, white women have a reason to be concerned about black men being allowed to enter the same restaurant as them and sit at the same bar as them. All people have a right to their concerns. No one has a guarantee that those concerns should be taken seriously. Right, that's the thing. Like, do your concerns merit limiting someone else's rights? No, they don't. It's like, you don't get to do that. I don't care how uncomfortable, quote unquote, cis women are around people they don't like. That's not my concern. The nature in North Carolina was beautiful. Nice. Right, I don't care about concerns. Please demonstrate the harm. Exactly. You can't justify taking away people's rights just because people want to. Like, you're basically saying because people want to, they're going to. Dilbert, I feel like maybe you stepped away for a minute and then came back, but I recently just said that when I go out in public, I assume that most people are going to assume that I am a cis female and that I don't correct them because I don't care. So, yeah, the answer to your question is no, I don't correct people in public about my gender. Because why would I do that? Unless it's like an environment that I plan on being in and like these are my friends. And even then, sometimes I don't. You know, the stimulating serotonin thing doesn't work. It doesn't mean that they have stopped using it. It's just torture for profit. True. So why should we care so much to make things laws? What are you talking about? What laws are you talking about, dude? I think that you don't have a very clear idea of what is really actually happening in the world with regards to what laws about trans people are passing. You know, we've been going over this on my show for a long time. A bunch of bills are passing in the United States that are rolling back trans rights. There aren't any bills passing that are advancing trans rights as far as like starting to enshrine protection for our pronouns in the law, you know? And if someone is telling you that, then they're lying to you. And I want you to be more like curious and look into things yourself. Because it sounds like you're about to do a Jordan Peterson on me. It kind of sounds like you're about to do oh, well, in Canada, they made it illegal to use the wrong pronouns. Like, they created workplace harassment protections. You tell me, how are all these laws going after trans rights? How do any of these laws actually cause you harm? Ooh, thank you so much for asking, Dilbert. Well, I live in the great state of Kansas, where I have just recently had my right to legally change my sex revoked. So I changed my legal sex years ago, and I am having it revoked from me. And my name is also on a list that the Attorney General has in his office because I changed my legal sex sometime in the past. So, you know, that means that if I were to get a job where I was trying to hide the fact that I'm trans, I will be outed immediately by my documentation. And Kansas already had limitations on this that were saying that you had to like physically transition to some extent. So it's not like we had like a self-declaration. I had to physically transition and get medical documentation to then ask the state to affirm my legal sex change. And I did that. And then they are revoking it retroactively, which shouldn't be legal, but whatever. And then additionally, the state of Kansas just made it so that trans people are legally not allowed to use the public restroom of, quote, the opposite sex. And not just public restrooms, but also access to, like, rape crisis centers and locker rooms and, like, schools, like, any other spaces that are gender segregated. You know, you're required to use the ones that you were assigned at birth. And the fun thing about that is that if you are gender nonconforming in any way, and, like, listen, there are cisgender women out there who are questioned when they try to enter the bathroom. So, like, I, being a person who has actually changed my body and stuff, like, I feel like I'm well within the realm of people who might get questioned in the bathroom, even if I do try to use the female restroom, which is the one that I was assigned at birth, you know? Like, actually, that's the space where there's going to be more scrutiny on what people look like and sound like. So if I go to the restroom that I'm supposed to go to when I'm in public, I'm at risk of having the cops called on me or being assaulted or harassed just for trying to use the public restroom. And that's me trying to follow the law, you know, as opposed to me having the right to choose whichever bathroom is going to be safer for me in a given instance, you know? Like if I know for sure that I look like a male that day, which I do sometimes, I could go use the men's restroom and not worry that I am breaking the law by doing it. Or like, you know, frequently I'm going to choose to go to the gender neutral option if there is one, or I'll just hold it in public because I usually don't want to deal with this question anyway. But yeah, I no longer have the ability to use public restrooms without being worried that someone is going to call the cops on me, that I might get arrested. So I've had 2 of my rights severely curtailed in the state. I was born here also. Like, I was born here. I've paid taxes here my entire life. Like, bathroom laws increase employment discrimination for us significantly and increases the chances that we'll be assaulted in the bathroom, which is already a significant risk for trans people. Yeah. Like, if you have a workplace, for example, that doesn't have a gender neutral bathroom, okay, so maybe you're stealth at work. So you have to either be breaking the law to continue to be stealth and have people not know that you're trans, or you have to start outing yourself by going to the opposite bathroom. Yeah, one of our legislators pre-filed a bathroom bill this month, you know. So, you know, Dilbert, you can try to catch me out and be like, oh, how is any of this directly harming you? Like, it is directly harming me and a lot of people that I love and care about, you know. There is a trans teenager in my family who has been basically at risk of having their hormones taken away because of the fact that these, like, things are trying to, like, restrict access to people under the age of 18. Like, he's already on the care and they were trying to take it away. Yeah, don't let him change the subject until he acknowledges what you said. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to say anything. He kind of wasn't saying anything for a while. Yeah, please, God, give us unisex bathrooms with stalls only. Yeah, we had a stealth person at work, had to have a workplace meeting when women were confused seeing him in the female bathroom. This is what it does. You know, you're sending trans men into the women's bathroom. You're trying to prevent men from being in the women's bathroom, but you're just putting them in there on purpose, right? So you can see how I'm not just making shit up. Chuds love to redirect when confronted with facts. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, I don't need this anymore. I don't really need this anymore either. We're mostly done. A trans man who used a women's restroom in order to follow the rules was beaten for it. Yeah, we went over that a long time ago. It was, what was it? It was a guy but there needs to be a compromise. What compromise, dude? You keep saying there needs to be a compromise, but then you don't answer me when I ask you what you mean by that. Here's my compromise position. Stop trying to restrict the rights of trans people to exist in public spaces. Like what compromise is there? I have the right to use a fucking bathroom. Trans women have the right to get changed in the locker room. Like, it's not complicated. No. What do you mean? Compromise what? What rights do you think I should be willing to give up, Dilbert? That's the question, you know? You think I should be willing to give up my right to exist in public? That's not a compromise. That's me being, like, willingly accepting oppressive circumstances, willingly accepting being treated like a second-class citizen. Of course, he can't answer. Like, the compromise is leave me alone. Like, you are causing the problem, not you specifically, Dilbert, because you're not the one passing any of these laws, but, like, because of the fact that trans people have been using the bathrooms without any problem for literally longer than both of us have been alive, there is no reason to restrict our rights. You have to come up with a very good reason to segregate people. I don't care about your opinion about how I look. Like, I look feminine right now because you can see some of my characteristics, like my hair. If I put my hair up under the hat and I, like, wear a hoodie, you know, it's a totally different situation. But you can't go based on, like, my appearance right now. And then, like, also stop trying to fucking redirect. Like, you need to explain to me why you think trans people should like give up any of their public access. You know, like, that's what I'm saying. If you want to restrict trans women from participating in sports, or if you want to keep trans people out of the bathrooms, you have to have a damn good reason, because we've been doing this just fine. We've been using whatever bathroom we are comfortable with. I don't care. It's not about me personally being affected by this. Answer my question. Why do you think trans people need to be restricted? Like, women's safety is not at risk. There is no compromise to women's safety. We've been doing this our entire lives. Trans women have been using the bathrooms. Trans men have been using the bathrooms. Nothing has ever happened to a cis woman because a trans woman was able to use the bathroom. It is already illegal for someone to commit an assault in the bathroom. So, like, having anti-trans laws is not going to stop someone from going into a bathroom and harming someone. They're not going to pretend to be a woman in order to enter that space. They're just going to go in and do the harm if they're going to do the harm, okay? Women's safety is not protected by barring trans women from the bathroom. You are compromising women's safety by doing that, because trans women are women who are also at risk of being assaulted. So why are you trying to put those vulnerable people in, like, a different space? There has never been a situation where a trans person has assaulted someone in the bathroom. And if you can come up with one example, that's still not a good enough reason to restrict, like, the rights of, like, literally thousands and thousands of Americans. Explain to me how men in the bathroom has anything to do with trans women. Trans women using the bathroom has nothing to do with women, has nothing to do with men's behavior. You can't restrict the rights of all trans people because you think some men might have done something bad at some hypothetical point. If you want to restrict someone's rights, you have to demonstrate, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt that someone else is more important, basically, like that like some other harm is happening. There is no harm to trans women using the bathroom, but there is harm in restricting their right to use the bathroom. Did you know, Dilbert, that trans people have a much higher instance of urinary tract infections and bladder infections than the rest of the population because we hold our pee all the time? Like, we have measurable negative health impacts. And also, like, the more you hold your pee, the more likely it is that you're gonna, like, have bladder failure and be incontinent later in your life. So these are things that can cause permanent long-term health consequences for us. And but we're worried about how women feel about trans people being in the bathroom. Like, who cares? I feel like there is a solution. Yeah, I feel like there is a solution, and it's the thing we've been doing our entire lives, which is letting trans people use the bathroom. It's not complicated. It's not hard. Like, leave us alone. Cis women are statistically the most supportive of trans people anyway. That's true. When he says we should compromise, he says your rights should be compromised. Big just kill half the Jews energy. Listen. Oh, God. Even the feelings argument is based in bullshit, truly. Dilbert, can you please just acknowledge that the solution to this problem is to stop trying to restrict trans people's rights? You're like, I feel like, we can end the stream on a good note. If you can just acknowledge that there is absolutely no reason to restrict trans people's access to public bathrooms. I feel like we can meet there, We can get there. Oh, you're just gonna leave now? It's always gonna come down to them not believing we're women. Yeah, of course. You are just as responsible for male violence as men are because you are a man, like, essentially is what they believe. Excuse me. I think Dilbert's gonna leave. He said, I wish you great personal success in 2024. In response to me saying, hey, can you please just admit that I'm right?